Hey everybody, welcome to Chuck Yates Needs a Job, the podcast. This is the Digital Wildcatters podcasting studio. Used to be funny when I'd turn in a podcast early days, Collin would always ask, how long is it? And does somebody cry? So I don't think I've done a real kind of emotional mental health type podcast in a while. So I went on my friend Donnie Davis and Stephanie Davis's podcast called Angst. So anyway, I thought you might want to check it out. Tell me what you think.
There's no sense in trying to corral this particular group of people, I don't think.
Famous last words.
Right. All right, I'll go ahead and do the intro. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Angst, hosted as always by Donnie Davis and Stephanie Davis. This week, we are honored and privileged to be joined by Chuck Yates, the galactic viceroy of energy, known by many, Nimble Fatty. You got to mention Nimble Fatty.
On Twitter.
Is there anything new is there any new nicknames that I'm missing?
Oh yeah. So Raj had me on his podcast and he dubbed me a micro celebrity. So I'm also a micro celebrity. Yeah.
I'll take it. A niche celebrity, if you will.
A niche celebrity.
I love it.
In my own mind.
Well, wait.
In our minds too.
Donnie, remember like one of the first episodes we recorded, we talked about something that Chuck said and neither of us could remember what it was. And we said, we're going to have him on the podcast and ask
That's
him about
true.
it.
We manifested this.
And we manifested this. This was like episode 1 or 2. So
well, it's something that I've shared with multiple people, and we'll probably get into that if we follow the outline. But
well, fire away. What was it?
It was when you were talking about the advice from your priest after your divorce in regard to a person having 4 marriages, and hopefully, person.
Yeah, that was one of the first conversations we ever had. Chuck, you brought that up. Stuck out to both of us.
So 2 things on that. Number 1, Patrick would love to come on y'all's podcast, so I will set that up, and he's really great.
Yeah.
Number 2, it was really good advice because Patrick, when I was going through the mess, Patrick's like, hey, just so you know, you have 4 marriages in your life. It may be to the same person. It may be to 4 different people. But, I mean, you guys have been married a while. Things change.
Yeah.
You change as people. Responsibilities change. And you've got to adapt with that. And really the challenge for staying married for a long time is making those changes together and working at it. And so I thought that was great advice. And so I'm glad y'all talked about that because it really helps frame things.
Well, here's the deal. We couldn't remember what they were, Chuck. What were they? Weren't they like different types?
She thought that you had 4.
You named them.
Like 4 classifications of the marriage, like the way that it changes or something like that. I don't remember that, but she does.
I could have swore you did.
Ooh, I'm sitting here going, Mo, Larry, Curly. But one of the things Patrick talks about in the context of this, and so this is probably what you were thinking of, is if you think about your life when you're born and up to some point, your life is really a biography. And by that, I mean, it's about you, but you're not writing the story. Your parents are telling you what to do. Teachers are telling you what to do. Bosses are telling you what to do. So they're really writing your story for you. It's about you, but you're not writing it. And then at some point in your life, and that's, call it 35 to 45, somewhere in there, kind of the middle age crazies, if you will, you tell your boss to F off, and the world doesn't end. Or... Yeah. You get into a fight with your parents and the world doesn't end and, 48 hours later, y'all make up or whatever. And you get this sense of kind of ownership of your life. You realize you can do some things. And so it transitions from really this biography to an autobiography because you are now writing the story. And what happens, kind of the midlife crisis and the get a divorce and date a stripper and things like that, is it's really dealing with the responsibilities that you took on in the biography section of your life to now you're in the autobiography and you don't have to do certain things. And it's struggling with that. You know, it's like learning to drive a car or anything else where you take control of something. There's always a struggle in balancing that. And so, you know, Patrick talks about that as a big transition, and that divides kind of marriage 2 and 3, maybe, or maybe even 1 and 2 if you're there. Another thing that Patrick talks about, and maybe he doesn't have to come on the podcast anymore since I'm doing my best impersonation.
We're just going to start calling you Patrick.
Yeah, exactly. I'm doing my best Episcopalian rector. But another thing Patrick talks about, and it's true, you know, people talk about the 7-year itch. And so there really are kind of just natural waves to life that run about 7 years. And a lot of times when, you know, you're in the middle of a funk or something happens, Patrick will always ask, you know, how old are you? And it turns out you're 40. And it's like, all right, well, you're kind of you're 5 years into a 7-year period in your life. You're starting to go into a wave. Or, you know, it'll happen this way. Well, how long have you been at the company? 6 years. Oh, you're starting to get into the 7-year itch. And so those play a part in these different marriages too, as you're going through these natural cycles. And that's actually a really eerie concept. Yeah. Like, because now you're going to think about it when stuff happens. You're gonna translate it back to 7 years. Well, where am I? Oh, I'm in year 2. Maybe that's why I'm doing great. I'm in year 6. You know, things are getting weird. So
Mercury's in retrograde. I'm in year 6. My taste buds are changing.
Dogs and cats sleeping together. It's just mass hysteria, right?
Chuck, your taste buds change every 7 years too. Did you know that? Tell Patrick that. Maybe he didn't know that.
I did not know that.
He probably knows it. Patrick probably knows it.
Interesting.
Knows. Yeah.
Yeah, Patrick knows. He's got a pipeline to God, you know. He knows it all.
That's interesting though about the 7-year itch, because you think about it, the way you already framed the conversation, which is that we're very much observing our lives as it happens in less control than we think. And then you think, oh, there's actually just this 7-year cycle thing that could also deeply affect the direction of my life that I'm also not really in charge of. Like, how much of this are we actually in control of is the question. And I think it's
the
very
Truman
little.
Show.
Well, and actually you guys have just hit the nail on the head, because I was thinking last night, okay, what are we going to talk about? Where are we going to go? And kind of the big reveal, if you said, okay, Chuck, tell me kind of the whole thing. What's the big deal? And it's, if you can really wrap your head around the fact that control is an illusion, that gets rid of 90% of anxiety, you know? And I've given this speech before, probably given it about 5 or 6 times. And the speech is, I learned more from the book Green Eggs and Ham than I did in business school. And it's kind of, you can use it as a business speech, and you can talk about the importance of marketing, because Sam I Am is arguably the greatest marketer on the planet, right? I mean, he's selling the hell out of those green eggs and ham.
Yeah.
But I always kind of end it with a serious, and I use it from a Christian viewpoint, but it doesn't have to be Christian per se. But I always say, you know, the key to this whole book is the unnamed man actually tries the green eggs and ham, and he likes it. You know, I mean, that's the punchline. And I think the message to that is be curious, don't be mad. When you're in a situation, control is an illusion. I mean, the unnamed man is not in charge of that. Sam I Am is clearly in charge of all that. And it's be curious and ask why. And, you know, when he finally succumbs and is, okay, sure, I'll try this, he likes it. And I think that is really kind of the key to anxiety, because anxiety is all manufactured in our mind.
Yeah.
It just is. It is not existent in the world. I mean, we know why we have it. Evolution said if you're not scared of the saber-toothed tiger, you're probably not going to be around. So, there's reason to be worrisome and about stuff. But I mean, I think you guys are hitting the nail right on the head. Because I have said every 6 months in my life, I really underappreciated how little control I really have. And I say that every 6 months.
Every 6 months.
Yeah, it's almost like the anti-narcissism. You just have to really sit there and go, it's just not about me, because it never is.
Yeah.
Which can be hurtful, right? It's like, wait a second, why is this not about me?
Sometimes be about me. Or
Chuck, I want to ask you, you seem like a chill guy, everybody likes being around you. You got good vibes. You make people feel good. But is Chuck anxious? Was Chuck an anxious young man? Tell us about all that. Tell us about young Chuck.
So this was interesting. My mom is a pack rat, just saves everything. And she has been on her mission, call it over the last 5 years, to kind of clean everything out. So she's gone into boxes of stuff. And so she has dumped on me boxes of things from my childhood. The quick side note, and then I will answer your question. The rejection letter I got from St. John's, the school here, it literally says in the rejection letter, and I've posted this on Twitter and Facebook, various places. It literally says something to the effect of, after interviewing Chuck and testing with Chuck, we just don't think he's capable of our curriculum. Wow.
Is this the one where you wouldn't get out of the car to go to the interview?
Yes. Yeah.
I heard that story.
So the family story real quick there was, Dad grew up down in Richmond, Rosenberg, and wanted to move there. Mom grew up in Westview. So Mom wanted to live in Westview. And they said, okay, if Chuck gets into St. John's, we'll live in Westview. If not, we'll move to Richmond, Rosenberg.
On you, Chuck. Your mom needed you.
Mom to this day says Dad must have doped my breakfast with sugar and Coke and just all this horrible stuff, because I threw a fit that morning. And anyway, so I didn't get into St. John's. And of course, Dad says, you brought so much shame on the family, we had to move out to Richmond. But so the reason I bring this up is there's a lot of stuff from my childhood. And one of the things I found was an application to a school. And one of the questions was, is Chuck a nervous child? And Mom's answer was yes. And it said, explain. And it was, always kind of bouncing his leg, covers up anxiety with jokes, and he bites his nails. And I was a big nail chewer. So yeah, I've always kind of thought as myself as very, very anxious, very much a worrier. I do come by that somewhat honestly, because Mom has always had the position, if I worry about something, it won't happen.
Yeah, that's me.
And
if I just go ahead and get it out of the way and worry about it, then we've already dealt with it and it's fine. It won't happen. Yeah.
And so I've always kind of felt myself very anxious and all. And I think a lot of kind of the post-separation divorce therapy, doing a lot of God stuff with Patrick, has been about, realizing I have no control. And that really has done a good job of getting rid of the anxiety. And quite frankly, I just don't feel anxious anymore. It's kind of fun. It's kind of fun,
I'm jealous, Chuck.
You kind of let go of the reins a little bit.
You let go of the reins, and you see the fun and stuff. It's like I'll give you a wild example. Well, I probably shouldn't do this. Oh, what the heck? My girlfriend never watches any of my content anyway. So okay. Yeah, it's like my girlfriend who I've been dating for 18 months. My joke is I've been dating her 18 months. She's been dating me 17 months. We had a bit of an issue there, but it's like, it's really funny because her ex-boyfriend is her son's soccer coach.
Okay.
And you're sitting there going, oh my God, that's crazy. That's horrible and all. And when you just go, I'm not in control, roll with it. It's kind of fun,
Yeah.
You just deal with stuff. Yeah.
So I feel like there's only one point in my life where I didn't feel anxious, and it was after I did that breathwork session, Donnie.
Yeah.
Chuck, I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's basically, for lack of a better way to explain this, it's a guided breath work, but you're basically hyperventilating yourself and really tapping into your body and your subconscious, and it's like this whole trippy experience. It was pretty cool. The only time I ever felt like what you're explaining was, the few weeks after that. Like I really felt like, yeah, everything's beautiful. It doesn't matter. This could be frustrating, but it's actually kind of not. You know what I mean? It was just like this vibe. So the fact that you get to live like that, Chuck, all the time, I'm very happy for you.
Not all the time, a lot of time. What's really interesting is, if you kind of look back through history, because, medicine doctors and folks figured out a lot of stuff. We do not give them credit for being as advanced as they are. And yoga and meditation and all that sort of stuff. Brene Brown, in all her research, America's therapist, Brene Brown, looked into all that and always thought breathing was BS. She's like, whatever, you can't do that. She went and hung out with the Navy SEALs for a couple of weeks. And I mean, of any people on the planet that have anxiety, it's the Navy SEALs.
Oh,
you're being shot at, you've got your dead buddy on your back, all the things you're having to do. You know how the SEALs deal with anxiety? In 1, 2, hold 1, 2, out 1, 2, hold 1, 2. They do the box breathing, and that's how they. So you have hit the nail on the head. So Stephanie, advice to you is the way you felt there. Anytime you get slightly anxious, choose one of the breathing patterns, whatever it is, regulate your breath, and it really does control your internal anxiety.
Yeah. How much of that too do you think comes with getting older, experiencing more things, dealing with more people? Because I will say it's not as bad as it used to be, because you're experiencing more things, you've got kids, you've been through all these things, and you're realizing I can handle a lot more than I think. I'm wondering how much just growing up has to do with it too.
Well, if you think about it, it's kind of when you're doing something for the first time, there's always anxiety. First time you go roller skating, you fall down, and then you realize, well, that wasn't so bad. You skate some more, you fall down again. At some point, it's no big deal. Reps are totally key to getting rid of anxiety, because you sit here and you go, wow, I'm 55 years old. I'm still here.
Yeah.
That sucks going through a divorce, but I'm still here.
Yeah.
It sucks getting fired. Still here.
Right. Yeah.
And so,
totally.
yeah. And I say this to my kids all the time. And kind of what my deal is if somebody reaches out and wants advice, I don't want anyone to make the same mistakes I made. I already, screwed it up. And so what I always tell people, if somebody reaches out, I'll say, hey, it takes me about 35 minutes to drive to Digital Wildcatters. When I leave my house, I'll text you, you call me, you can have me for 35 minutes. So the advice I always tell young people is, hey, I'm 55. And I am not in any way, shape, or form diminishing the anxiety you're feeling at age 23 or 27 or whatever. But I can tell you this, at 55, no idea what I was anxious about at 27. It's not even there,
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it's not real for you and all that, but I'm just here to tell you, you're going to get through it. You really are.
Yeah.
And in a weird sort of way, if you just kind of embrace it and realize you don't have any control over it, it's going to be kind of fun, I mean, yeah.
Anxiety is all about what can I control? This is out of my control. How do I control it? Right? Which is so, like, why do we feel like we need to control anything, really? It's, like we've already discussed, kind of a myth.
Well, and the other part about it too that I think is really important to focus in, that you'll figure out, one, you can't control anything. So just give in. It's cool. Go with the flow. Number two, 85-90% of the beef you're having, the arguments you're having or whatever, literally has nothing to do with you or the argument you're having.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That person, so you look at Brene Brown's research, and I think she got it right. We do stupid stuff. We're bitchy. We're grumpy. We drink too much. Our bad behavior is usually driven by the fact we feel unworthy of love. Mm-hmm. And you can say that a million different ways, but just that's what it is. And so when someone is feeling unworthy of love, they'll bitch at you for something and you'll have an argument about something and it has nothing to do with that, And you guys have been married a while. Y'all have that. There are days you just don't. And so what's so important about this is, one, you have to recognize that. When I'm picking a fight with Stephanie, I got to really say, no, I feel unworthy of love for this. Usually the man's pressure point is he can't fix something.
Yes.
And and Donnie, you just have to man up and say, hey, Stephanie, I can't fix this. And it makes me feel unworthy of love. And as much as that sucks, because we're not wired that way,
right?
If you do that, that'll be better. And Stephanie, you need to realize when Donnie's bitching about something, it's like, hey, you're not bitching about the fact that I dinged the car or that I, didn't cook what you liked for dinner. What's going on with you? Why do you feel bad? What's going on?
Right.
And that, it's seriously, every time I sit there and I think, no, I'm arguing with Collin about something, it's Collin had a bad day.
Right.
It had nothing.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with me. And if you can if you can adopt that side of the control ledger, maybe if we want to call it that, that's going to go a long way.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes you just don't worry if you're like, they're having a bad day, whatever.
Yeah, not on me. So when you brought up Donnie, I'm sorry, I know you made an outline here, but I feel like we're just kind of flowing. But
I told you it was pointless.
Thanks.
I didn't even see the outline.
Yeah,
so
Chuck didn't even read it. So talking about not feeling worthy of love kind of made me think about, I was recently laid off and you have questions of not feeling worthy. You were, that's a big reason I know you because of, you got laid off and became nimble fatty. You know what I mean? So I see on LinkedIn a lot lately of people getting laid off, and I have experienced it. Donnie's experienced it. Chuck, did you get laid off, fired? I don't really know that there's a difference except terminology, but I kind of want to talk about that for people that are going through that, how that can feel, and kind of how you get out of it and realize it doesn't have anything to do with you.
Yeah. Kind of the shorthand I always give on that is shame hates words. So ultimately, when you're not worthy, you're feeling shame, embarrassment, whatever you want to call it. And if you internalize that and you focus on that and you think about that and you beat yourself up on it, it's exponential. Shame will just tear you to shreds. And unfortunately, because it's not easy to do, the only way you can come over that is to talk about it. You don't even have to have a resolution to anything. You just have to say it. And so, everybody's embarrassed. They don't want to say the stupid stuff they've done. The reason Patrick's my priest is every time I feel really embarrassed, I've done something really stupid, and I sit down with him and I'm like, I did this. He always goes, that's nothing. I did this. I'm like, dude, you're a priest. And he's like, I know, that's really bad, right? And I'm like, oh. But so the thing you need to know about that in that moment, the shame you're feeling, is you got to go tell someone. You just do. Mm-hmm. You have to talk about it. You have to say how you feel like shit. You have to say about, I got fired because I got drunk and threw up one night, or whatever, whatever caused you to get fired, or whatever. I didn't perform very well, my heart wasn't really in it, whatever it was. You got to go tell somebody. And the two things that'll happen in that scenario is, one, 99% of the time the person you choose to tell will give you a hug.
Yeah. And that's
whether
all you
that's
need.
a mental hug, whether that's a physical hug.
Yeah.
If you choose to tell someone, they're going to be cool.
Yeah.
And then the second thing you have to do, because you're going to have to talk yourself into admitting this, whether it's to your wife, to your best friend, to a priest, to a stranger on an elevator. I mean, one of the deepest conversations I've ever had in my life was with a stranger on an airplane. And
What'd
the
y'all
thing
talk
you're going to
about?
have to, that was right, literally, that was probably an hour and a half after I found out Kim had filed for divorce.
Oh
I
my
went, I
God.
went and got, I went and got on a plane. Yeah, it's a crazy story. I told it on a podcast one time. The abridged version is, I'm sitting there, I'm freaked out. There's a family friend who sits in the row behind me, and this guy next to me just goes, "Did I tell you the story about how I almost died in an emergency room?" And I was like, "Well, since we've never met, no, you haven't." And he
Yeah.
just he talked to me the whole flight, and he's telling me all sorts of stuff about, he's actually friends with the guitar player Brian Welch from
Corn.
Korn,
Yeah.
and Brian Welch was on the verge of killing himself. And this guy, Eric, just sent an email to Brian that said, "I love you." And Brian calls Eric, "What the hell are you doing? I'm sitting here with a gun about to kill myself and all this." And
Oh.
Eric says, "I don't know. God told me to do it." So Brian walks out. He goes to a church, the nearest church, and talks to the priest there for 24 hours and converts to Christianity and all that. That email is supposedly in Brian Welch's autobiography. This is the email that saved my
Oh.
life. So this guy, Eric, sits there for 2.5 hours, 3 hours, talking to me about all this stuff. And we get off the plane, and the family friend says goodbye and runs off. And I said, "Hey, Eric, I'm so sorry I couldn't talk to you. That was a family friend. Right before I got on the plane, my wife filed for divorce. I was freaking out." And he said, "Well, Chuck, I've been in business 30 years. I fly 3 times a week. Do you know how many times I've talked to the person next to me?" I said, "How many?" And he goes, "Never." I said, "Well, why?
Wow.
Why?" I said, "Why'd you do it?" And he said, "God told me to." So,
Oh.
so whoever you choose to tell this story to is one going to be accepting. So you know that.
Mhm.
And the second thing, to build yourself up to have that talk with somebody, just say, "What would you say to your best friend if they told
Yeah.
you what you were going through?" And you're
Yeah.
always kinder to your best friend than you are to yourself. And
Absolutely.
so that's not going to solve any problems. That's not going to get you out of debt. That's not going to find you your next job.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you're going through this, just say it, because shame melts with words. Shame really does hate words. And if we can get rid of that shame we're feeling, we're more motivated. We'll get up and say, "All right, I'm going to work on my resume. I'm going to call. I'm going to try to get this job. I'm going to drive my kids to school this week because I can,
Yeah.
because I'm off," or whatever. So yeah, that. Shame hates words.
I really like that as a quote. Shame hates words. Because it's
It
so true.
does. Because
And
it
it's
just
like, go ahead.
no, I want you to talk. I'd love to hear
Well,
what you have
shame
to
is
say.
also extremely heavy. So he's like, you can feel the moment that it melts away. You can
Yeah.
feel the moment that you get that physical or mental or whatever hug that you mentioned. Everything changes immediately as soon as you get it off your chest and receive
You know
love
what
in
I
exchange.
You know what I think it's like? It's like a balloon that's being filled with air, and slowly filled with air. And actually sometimes shame is a balloon fastly getting filled with air. But the second you talk, you pop the balloon and the pressure is gone.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
like
it
that
is
too.
amazing how quick you can get rid of shame by literally just saying it out loud after you've done your breathing exercises.
Yeah.
You
Right.
Yeah.
Did you have something you wanted to say about shame, Steph, or did I take that?
You had it. I loved it.
Okay, good. So I think
By
one
the way,
thing.
y'all are so cute. I always love hanging out with y'all too.
So I was just going to kind of go down the history of how we met you really quick because you do, with your niche celebrity status, there's a certain level of like, you hear stories about Chuck Yates before you meet him kind of a thing. And I remember obviously knowing you're this successful business guy, you're, whatever. But the moment that I actually met you, it was like within 10 minutes, I was like, oh, this guy is actually a real person. You and I connected on several topics on an airplane. And it was just like, oh.
On a private jet. We were on a private jet with Chuck.
Oh, God. It was so nice back when I was rich. That was so
man,
fun.
we loved it, Chuck.
That was great, yeah.
And that was the other thing, was that it was like this guy who I don't know is obviously found some success in his life financially, career-wise, but you were so generous too. You were, you bought champagne that trip, and we all got to experience flying on a private jet for the first time because of you. And it was like, you didn't do it with any kind of like, oh, look what I can buy. It was just like, oh yeah, this is what we're going to do. And it was just like, this guy is a sweetheart is the only word that I can come to my mind. Just this very genuine, kind, generous guy. It's like, oh, I kind of wish that was more melded into the story of Chuck Yates that I got leading up to it. But I wanted to thank you for that.
Well, you're kind to say that, and everybody knows this, and I've never understood why more people don't do this. When you're a kid and you get a marble set and you get all your friends together and you play marbles, it's so much more fun than playing with marbles by yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you eventually lose the marbles, but you remember how much fun you had that day.
Yep.
Yeah. So it may also be oldest of 4 boys, you just always had someone around and all that. But yeah, and that's an important thing that I think people need to realize is liking the toys is okay, needing the toys is not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the toys, I don't need the toys. And so toys are meant to be shared.
Yeah.
It's a blast.
You've got a lot of love to give, Chuck, and I think anybody that
You're
knows
kind.
you knows that about you. So
I'm just shallow and needy. So
Me
I needed
too.
to come on the podcast to hear this. This is great.
Hey, look, when you told
Okay,
me
enough about you, more about me. Yeah.
Right. Keep the compliments coming.
I do want to talk about, Chuck, you did this retreat. You put this retreat together a couple of years ago with Patrick, right? It was out at your house in Richmond. And you didn't share any details about who was there, anything like that. It was very, very private and exclusive. But from what I'm remembering, it was basically a feelings retreat. If you've got heavy stuff, if you need support in that, from what I'm remembering, that's what that weekend was. Is that right?
Yeah. So, when I originally started the podcast, I really thought it was going to be me, 13-year-old me, telling poopy jokes.
Oh yeah, your podcast, Chuck Yates Needs a Job. That launched.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna go be Howard Stern light or something and just tell jokes and all that. And the whole reason I had time to start the podcast and do it was because oil was at minus 37 and half the industry had been laid off. Mm-hmm. And what I found really quickly was nobody wanted poopy jokes, and people were actually responding to me kind of sharing my story and setting myself on fire every day on Twitter. And I wound up just getting a lot of reach out from people that kind of wanted to share their story. And, I was such a shit show that nobody knew, everybody knew I couldn't judge them. And so the podcast got way more serious and more kind of into mental health than I would have thought it would have, but it did early on. And just another thing that kind of just popped out of that is people were like, can we go get a drink? And I'd have a drink. And a lot of really prominent people in the industry just all the anxiety, all the worry. And so Patrick and I one day, literally just on the fly, I said, dude, come over and shoot a podcast tomorrow morning. He goes, yeah, what are we going to talk about? I go, we're going to organize a retreat at my house. And he goes, what's that going to be? I go, I have no idea. That's your job. So anyway, we wound up doing a couple of them. where we had people. It was kind of 48 hours, 72 hours at my house. We kind of walked around Richmond. We had dinner at Sandy's restaurant where we had a private room and everybody started telling their story. Uh, Literally, the prayer garden at the Baptist church in downtown Richmond is one of the prettiest places on the planet. It has the largest oak tree in Fort Bend County, and you're there at 10:30 at night. It's just beautiful. And so we would walk over there, we'd tell our story, we'd make cook all our meals. I was like, okay, we'll go pick up breakfast tacos. Patrick like, nah, we need to cook. And I was going, what are you talking about? That makes no sense. He goes, no, it's very primal. It's, and you're working together as a team and all that. And literally one of the biggest reveals where somebody was chopping onions laid something out. Hey, this happened to me. And you kind of realize that if you're looking down chopping onions, it's easier to kind of share something because you're not looking anyone in the eyes. But anyway, and Patrick led us through some work. And one of the cool things he did is he gets you to draw a family tree. And you start, these are my parents, these are my siblings, these are my grandparents, great grandparents. And you start telling what you know about all those people. And you realize shit that happened 100 years ago is impacting you today. My great grandfather died of a heart attack at age 50, led my grandmother to do this. So one, you figure that out. And then and so everybody starts telling their stories, and you have, 70-year-old CEO of an oil and gas company who's still triggered by his 89 or 90-year-old mother. Everybody's crying at some point. Everybody's hugging at some point. But the coolest thing is the way you always leave it. The way Patrick would leave it is after we've shared all this stuff, gone through all this, Patrick says, okay, we went back, and by the time you got to your grandparents and great grandparents, you were literally saying 3 words. I know these 3 things about this person. You didn't know much more. So tell me the 3 words you want your great grandchildren to know about you.
Oh, that's
and
good.
Then, and it lasers in, and you're really thinking about what do I want to be and all. So, yeah, those were cool. We did a couple of them, and, it wouldn't surprise me if Patrick and I do more of them, just because, there's some issues with how do you follow up, how do you stay in touch with the group, and continued stuff. But it's a pretty amazing kind of 48, 72 hours.
I think that's awesome. I didn't know that was the first I'd ever heard of that, but that's incredible that, first of all, that y'all kind of facilitated that, but that people came and opened up. I think that there is definitely something to be said about just people being together. There's like vulnerability just kind of like spreads in situations like that. And everyone needs it. So that's awesome that you did that.
And there's a selection bias in that if you're willing to go to my house for 48 to 72 hours or whatever it is with a priest who's going to lead us through some work, you got shit you need to say. Right?
For sure.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about the layoff, getting fired aspect, which was obviously on the outline. But let's talk about the fact that you were, for all intents and purposes, very successful in that career at some point before the layoff. So give some insight into, just because I know who you are, and you're kind of like Chuck Yates that's in the hoodies and the Air Maxes and tight jeans and stuff. So lay out the kind of tit for tat of career success versus fulfillment in that role, and how that kind of came to form your middle age and how you got to this point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. And I'm going to kind of wrap it into this a little bit, because one of the things I'm going to do over the next year, it really has to do with Digital Wildcatters, is I'm going to go around and give the speech to all the old white guys about kids, hey, what I've learned from the front line. Because, I'm dealing with younger people all the time, and I get to see this. And I don't have the speech fully written in my mind yet, but I'm kind of thinking it through, and and all. And I think the big thing that it really turns on, that's a difference between my generation and your generation, you guys just get fulfillment from a much broader range of things than I did. I mean, literally growing up, it was, what is my salary? What is the name of the company on my business card? And then maybe at some point, what are the athletic achievements of my son? You
Right.
know, I mean, that's
Yeah.
literally what we were allowed to get fulfillment from. And, you know, kind of two things happened to me is I got fired, and literally when when you get fired from running a private equity firm, you're just like immediately cut off. You know, it's not like there's transition stuff, but I mean, it's literally like you have no responsibility the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And the 72 hours kind of post that and not having any responsibility, I mean, the world just totally changed. I use this as an analogy, although it's not a great one, is my mom had a hip replacement surgery, and I went and saw her the next day, and I'm like, "Hey, Mom, how you doing?" She goes, "Well, obviously I hurt because I've been splayed open and, a bone ripped out." But she said, "This chronic arthritis that I had is gone. So I can tell I'm going to feel a lot better." And she goes, "I had no idea how much pain I was in with that arthritis until now that it's gone." It was the same way with stress. Like literally I got fired. The next morning I woke up, and you two know me well enough that you'll appreciate this. I literally got up the next morning and I took my cell phone out and I recreated the scene from Ferris Bueller where he's in the shower and, he's doing his hair all up. And I think it was Timbuk 3 or whatever singing in the background, "Shoot it up." And I just did that. And that was literally the most fun I'd had in like a decade. And I'd done some really cool shit. I'd gone Super Bowls, whatever you want. But just that stress was gone, and the big hanging over of that stress was gone. And so, look, I made money where, I don't have a jet anymore, but at the same time, the kids aren't going to starve. They're going to get
Right.
through college. So you can kind of look back and say, okay, it was worth it. It put me in a place to live like this. But man, if I could go back to my old self, I would have said, it's so cliche to say, but stop and smell the roses. I mean, you don't have to sit up at the office till 1 a.m. putting together a pitch book unless you want to,
Right.
And I think in your generation, I see that it's less, you're not just so career driven, you get fulfillment for other places. And if we as an industry, or me as an old white guy CEO, doesn't adapt to that, we're not going to have any kids in this industry.
Yeah.
We're just
It's
not,
true.
One other thing kind of along those lines, and I truly believe this, when I gave a speech for the Petroleum Alliance of Oklahoma, kind of their first event post-COVID, and they wound up having a dinner. And I said this, and I don't know what the exact metrics are on this, so I'll make it up. But like every 2 to 3 years, a company needs to give people 90 days off. And when I say give them 90 days off, like literally they can't even see an email. Like literally no communication. You get to walk away. Because I mean, 2 to 3 weeks later, I mean, I was seeing things with such clarity of, oh my God, why were we doing it this way?
Yeah.
I created a product that if I had been at Kane if I'd created that product back at Kane, it'd be a multi-billion-dollar business line. I mean, I just saw things so much more clearly that you're doing yourself a disservice as a manager, as a CEO, if you're not giving that downtime to your employees to just go think. The girlfriend's on family leave right now just because she's dealing with parents and health issues, and I'm seeing it in her.
Yeah.
Just kind of like relaxing and going, oh, hey, when I go back, I can do this, I can do that. Yeah. So it's amazing how paralyzing stress and anxiety is.
Absolutely. So you bring up that, 90 days off. So when I got laid off at the end of October, I started my new job January 15th. So I had all of November, all of December, and the beginning of the year just to be at home with my family, be there with my daughter. And I get emotional when I think about it, because the day I got laid off, I picked her up and we went to the movies in the middle of the day when she should have been at school. And she felt like $1,000,000, Chuck. It cost me $20 after all of that. I felt like $1,000,000. You know what I mean? So having that whole time that I had off was, I just cherish it so much, because it was so good for our family, seeing how good it was for my daughter, and just not being stressed about anything, not having my mind in 100 different places instead of where it needed to be is at home in that moment. So I'm totally on board with that, Chuck.
I said same sentiments, different way in that speech to the Petroleum Alliance I almost hate myself that it took getting fired for me to engage with my kids like I did. And it's not because I didn't love my kids, all that. It's just, you come home from work and you don't shut it off.
Yeah.
But when you don't have a job, you can really engage with your kids. And man, my kids are amazing. And I won't tell Kane Anderson this, but I actually thank them for doing that, because I have, knock on wood, a really great relationship with the 3 kiddos and all.
Yeah.
And it was just because I could be there, and by that I mean mentally.
Yes,
mentally. I went to the soccer games. I did all that, but like truly engaging, and it was great. So I get fired, and you got to negotiate your separation agreement, and it's always, is there going to be a lawsuit over all this? And at some point, I don't know. Have you ever seen what Tina Turner did with the divorce from Ike? So
No.
Tina just wanted her name. She walked into the judge and said, I don't want any of his money. And there supposedly was $5 million sitting there. And Tina was like, I don't want his money. I don't care. He can have it all. I just want my name, because people know me as Tina Turner. And Ike was, of course, well, that's my name. You can't have my name. And the judge is like going, you're crazy, because you can get all this money.
Right.
You can get all this money. And Tina said, just want my name. And judge said, okay, sign. So judge rules, Tina Turner. She walked out the door. She had $12 to her name. She walked to a hotel, like a rat infested type hotel. And she walked in and she said, hey, I'm Tina Turner. I don't have any money. Can you give me a room? I'm playing the Grammys in 2 weeks. They're going to pay me and I'll pay you back. And the GM was really cool. He said, Ms. Turner, it's an honor to have you, and you will never pay at my hotel.
Oh.
And he did that. But I was kind of at that point, it was like, I don't care. I just want my name. Let me go away. So I knew there wasn't going to be a lawsuit with Kane.
Right.
And quite frankly, there shouldn't be. We get along. In fact, I'm going to Miami and going to go have dinner with the CEO of Kane. And I told him, you're buying. But, it's going to be an expensive bottle of wine. But yeah, there wasn't. But, so it took a while to figure out that there wasn't going to be a lawsuit. So about 4 weeks later, had the kids in the car. And I'm like, all right, guys, Daddy has some news. And I go, I've been fired. And so Charlie immediately, just as Charlie's prone to do, just, kind of freaks out. And I go, don't worry, Charlie, you can stay in college. Yeah. So Charlie kind of excels. And Sarah, who's my smart, thoughtful one, she's sitting there reading Dad. And she goes, okay, Dad's not too worried about this, so I must be okay. Mm-hmm. So she said, well, I guess we can't call you prominent businessman anymore. But and then, of course, my baby Kelly goes, Daddy, does this mean we can't go get ice cream?
Oh, like, sweet baby. I hope you took them to get ice cream.
We drove straight to get ice cream. But just, I can't tell you how the level of engagement was with my kids kind of from that moment on. And if you're not doing that, no wonder you're anxious.
Yeah.
Go engage with your kids.
And no
Yeah,
wonder,
it's
like, they're
amazing.
anxious too. You've got all
And
these
that's,
anxious
Yeah,
kids.
by the
Yeah.
way, that's all that they want. Like they don't
yeah,
care. It's not really about ice cream even. You know what I mean?
yeah.
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 It's
No,
just about,
that's exactly right. And you'll just find, I mean, and the more time you spend with your kids, you'll figure out what more and more a treasure they truly are.
even when they're mean, they're a treasure.
Yeah. Sarah's the most brutal. I love Sarah to death, but she's just brutal.
Yeah.
So we're driving along one day, and y'all know the singer Jules, one of my really good friends. And so anyway, we're driving along, and Sarah's like, "Hey, Dad, did you and Jewel ever date?" And I said, "No, we've always just been friends." And Sarah goes, "Oh, so you screwed that up too?" And I was like, "Oh, it gets worse." Because we're driving along, and I said, "Well, you know, Jewel, she likes her macho, swaggy athlete types." And Sarah kind of under her breath goes, "I guess that Peloton just doesn't match up."
Oh, no. Chuck, do you still have your Peloton?
I still have my Peloton, and it still doesn't
Okay.
match up. But anyway,
Okay. When you do use it, who's your favorite instructor?
you know what's weird is, oh God, what's her name? I used to always be is it Jennifer? I was a big fan of hers. But you know what I found is my metrics in terms of how fast I ride, calories I burn, do better when I watch TV on my iPad versus take a class.
Oh,
Hmm.
And
really?
generally with intense dramas.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And
And you're
so,
just going.
yeah, no, so I think right now I'm rewatching The Sopranos. And
Oh,
we'll have
yeah.
during Breaking Bad, I was in peak shape.
You need to do Ozarks too. That's a good one. That'll be a good
oh yeah.
Peloton
Oh
show
yeah,
for
I
you.
have not done that, but
Yeah.
I'll add
It's
that to the list.
You'll lose 20
completely
pounds watching Ozarks.
stressful
Perfect.
every episode. Yeah. So
Nice. There we
jot that
go.
down, Ozarks. And it's Jason Bateman. Who doesn't love him?
How can you
Yeah,
not love Jason Bateman?
I
Friend of the
loved him
show.
since Silver Spoons.
Oh, I don't know what that is. Do you, Donnie?
Ricky, see, this is the age gap. Ricky Schroeder was a child actor, and that was his first starring role where his dad was really, really rich, and John Houseman played his grandfather. And anyway, Jason Bateman was the best friend. And it was
I'll have
called
to look it
Silver
up.
Spoon because it was the young kid dealing with being rich in kind of a normal world.
We've hit on all of my points that I wanted to hit on naturally, just like we usually do. So I appreciate that. Chuck, is there anything that you want to promote? I mean, we talked about your podcast, but would you like to promote it? You are a professional talker at this point, so I think you have like 3 shows you might want to plug.
Oh, yeah. Get the list out.
So Chuck Yates Needs a Job is, think, kind of long format Joe Rogan style podcast, have a guest on, and it vacillates between prominent folks in the energy business and then just stuff I'm interested in. And then I do BDE, Big Digital Energy, which we call the weekly summary of the energy business for people who think Jim Cramer sucks. And then, at Digital Wildcatters, we're doing a lot of stuff. We do energy tech nights. We're doing 6 this year.
Oh,
We're going
wow. I remember when we
Houston.
just did one.
Oh, I remember when it was like all our budget to rent the Heights
Yeah.
Theater,
Oh, the
going,
good old
how are we going to
days.
pay people next week? Yeah. But we're doing 6 energy tech nights. So it's Houston, Midland, Oak City, Denver, Fort Worth during Doug, and then Calgary. We're international.
Oh, Mr.
Very cool.
Worldwide. I love it.
Yeah, and then we've got Empower coming up, our Bitcoin mining for the energy business conference. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Love that. So we're doing that, and then kind of the last thing I'll pimp on that front is we've got our knowledge share platform called Collide, and one of the things we've done, and this is kind of dumb luck, but I'll say we were thoughtful and we planned it and all, is we actually built an AI-driven search engine for all our content. So
Okay.
like we have 500 hours of content, right?
Oh, yeah.
Podcasts, presentations at Energy Tech Night. So we built that and we were using it internally. And we were talking to a large E&P company. They go, "Oh my God, we'll buy that from you. We use your podcast for energy tech discovery in the industry. You know,
That's
we
great.
go watch your podcast before we meet with somebody." And so we've probably added another 2,500 of hours of content in it, and that's Collide Pro, and it's our subscription
Hmm.
service. And you know, you start talking about it, and people go, "Oh, you're building the Google of energy." Our AI stuff is getting so good. I'm like, "Nah, we're not
No,
Google. We're
way
the
better.
Chat GPT of energy."
Yeah,
And
AI
it's
is
getting,
it.
and we're when you go query our database of stuff, our answers are coming out better than Chat GPT. So it's pretty cool. We're gonna have a new version of Clyde out because we released the first version that I call really really shitty, and then
Hmm.
we released the second version was not as shitty but still kind of shitty.
Getting there.
And the one we released in about 4 weeks, we spent a lot of time on, and like the chat functionality instead of
Hmm.
being Twitter or LinkedIn is going to be more Reddit
Got
Oh,
it.
type
okay. The
functionality
threat.
because
Yeah.
that's the feedback we got from the community is they really really wanted gamification, you know,
Hmm.
being
Yeah.
able to rate people and all that. And so yeah, that's what we're doing. The one thing I do want to say to you guys is what you guys are doing. I mean, coming on here once a week, being real, talking about anxiety and all that is just so important. And kudos to you guys for doing
Thank
it
you.
because I really meant that shit about shame, hate, and words.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah, we've wanted to start a podcast for a very long time, and we were like, "Oh, you know what we have so much experience with? Anxiety."
Yeah.
So it just kind of worked out, and then having conversations, with people like you and Jeremy Funk and Mark Freeman and just all the things we're learning about anxiety and all of that. It's people need to talk about it. They need a space like you provide that space with your retreat. People just sometimes need a space to feel like, okay, I can feel this way. This isn't shameful to feel this way.
It's not just me.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's the
Chuck,
biggest
another
part of
thing I
it.
want to talk about too is the YDC. Are you still involved in that quite a bit?
I'm still at YDC. So YDC is the Youth Development Center. It runs an after-school literacy program. We talk about it being for the Fifth Ward, but it's actually kind of north of the Fifth Ward. But think east of 59 and north of 610, and that's kind of one of Houston's roughest and tumblest neighborhoods out there. And so we pick kids up from school, generally first graders through sixth graders. We put them through a really intensive academic program focused on literacy, but we also work on other subjects, mathematics, history. And if a kid will spend a year in our program, they'll increase their reading and comprehension scores by 2 grade levels. So
Wow.
we get
Wow.
these fifth graders that read at first grade levels. And quite frankly, they read at first grade levels because that's as low as we test, you
Yeah.
know. And, you know, they'll spend a year, we'll get them to third grade, they'll spend another year and we'll catch them up. We've built a building out there that literally is nicer than where my kids go to school. And I think that's important because so much of that community suffers from the transient nature of the community. You know, dad goes to jail, you got to go live with your aunt, kids are passed around.
Yeah.
That we wanted to send the message of, hey guys, we're here and we're here forever. And that's a big fancy building because you know it's going to be here in 50 years. And anyway, so just amazing results because at the end of the day, you're basically state governments decide how many prisons they're building based on third grade reading levels.
Oh, I didn't know
If
that.
you that's one of the tightest correlations in the planet. If you know if X percent of your third graders aren't reading, you know in 15 years you need this many prisons.
Oh
Wow.
my gosh, I
That's
Yeah,
didn't know
crazy.
that.
and so you're kind to ask about we our annual fundraiser is a roast. you know,
It's a good
it's
time.
me.
I went once.
It's me, you know. Yeah, and we've roasted a bunch of who's who in the industry. Last year it was the Rice Brothers.
I bet that
So
was
we had
good. I wish I could have gone to that.
yeah, we had Toby, we had Derek, we had Danny, and we had Ryan. And anyway, so we do this roast. We take everybody's cell phone away when they walk
Yes.
in. So there's no recordings of any of this, but we have a great time. We usually wind up having about 700, 800 people at that thing. We usually wind up raising $1 million-ish that runs the center, and it's a lot of fun. But you're kind to ask about YDC because
Yeah,
it
for
really
sure.
is a great organization.
Absolutely. Chuck, it sounds like a lot of exciting things on the horizon for you and Digital Wildcatters, so I'm excited about that. I hope the AI is actually just Chuck Yates in a closet on a computer trying to find the prompts. I would love that. That's a good bit if you want to take that one.
That actually is a good
You,
bit.
you know, I actually have sat here and said, you know, in effect, all AI is you're training something, right?
Yeah.
And
right.
because of the computer power, you can detect patterns, you can, you know, and I was like, God, man, that would be great. Because if I could remember half the stuff I said, that would actually be fun to have something that would parrot it back.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I've lost my brain, so I can't remember. But
I love it.
Chuck, we are so thankful to have spent this time with you today. Thank you very
oh,
much.
thank you, thank you for having me. And let's definitely get lunch or dinner
Yeah, for sure.
on the assuming the girlfriend won't break up with me for anything I'd said. I'd love for you guys to meet Laura.
Yeah, if you make it to
we'd love
19
to.
months, let's do it in month 19.
There
Or
we go.
18,
That
whatever
sounds
she
perfect.
thinks.
However you count it, 19 or 18.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. Thank you, Chuck. Take
Thanks,
care.
guys.